quick note on audio with this episode. There have been some recent issues with some of the apps that we use and a couple of interfaces and trying to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. So I want to apologize in advance for any audio quality issues experienced with this episode. Some additional testing seems to indicate that we kind of know what the problem might be going forward, and hopefully will be resolved after this particular set of shows. But just so that you are aware, there may be some disparate audio in this episode and in the next episode. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if I can begin to describe the rage that is in my heart right now.
Uh-oh.
I opened up FaceTime and I right-clicked on your card, remembering from last time that I could right-click on the card and say FaceTime audio, and do that. Make it real easy. And when I clicked on your card, it said, "Oh, do you want to block this?" It gave me the opportunity to use the iPhone and call your telephone number over cellular, block caller, remove from recents, or show contact card. I'm like, what? What has happened? I didn't update yet, and I was annoyed. And then I right-clicked on the phone handset icon on the bottom right of the card, and then it gave me that option.
I mean, I want to not laugh.
No. You're supposed to laugh.
It's so current Apple that it's frustrating and annoying and mind-numbingly bad at times.
I'd like to believe that this is what happens when... So there's one thing where it's like software that doesn't work, i.e. disk utility. And maybe it works now, but it didn't for a bit. But then there's the other thing of like actual how you interact with it, and that's I can say it's real easy for me to think. It's not a hard stretch. It seems pretty logical for me to think that somebody who wasn't interested in how computers work and how people use computers, design things to look pretty and not to make them functional, makes me think that's where that came from. I don't think that kind of person would have anything to do with the lack of functionality for disk utility, but would have everything to do with how FaceTime audio works.
I think it's even more concerning than that, though.
Oh, your audio got real bad. Your audio has gotten really bad. It's like super staticky.
Uh-oh. Let's just see if this makes a difference.
You sound like a character from...
Did that make a difference?
Oh, yeah. You sounded like somebody from Duke Nukem, the very first game.
I unplugged the audio interface and plugged it back in. I don't know if that was just a fluke thing or what, but we'll see. But what I was going to say was I think it's more concerning than that, because if you right-click on a name in that list, you expect the same behavior regardless of whether you right-click on an icon next to the name in that list. Just general computer usage.
Absolutely.
And to have different sets of behaviors depending on where you click without any meaningful way of giving that feedback to the user other than just discovery and error, I mean, that's piss poor design.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to necessarily, continue to beat a dead horse, but I think this is a dead horse worth beating.
Well, I mean, yeah, until our computers update.
I figured I would at least provide a brief update on just the state of things at home for a couple of different reasons. One, I know it's not that different from last week when we recorded anyway, but since then I listened to the most recent episode of ATP and found it interesting that there was discussion related to the UNAS and Ansible. Well, not Ansible specifically, but Ansible was mentioned a couple of times. And it was just hilarious to me that all of that came together in an episode that, realistically shouldn't have necessarily touched on either one, I suppose. I don't know. I guess it could, but either way, it was just funny because it's normally not something that I have direct insight on, and so I was thinking about just generally speaking, the project that I set out for myself and what its state was in. And that's what made me think that, yeah, maybe I'll recap real quick and provide an overview of actually what's complete and what's upcoming.
Yeah, so I thought you would like that episode, and I did remember that somebody mentioned Ansible, and it's just really interesting to me to like hear, like I've been listening to that show since its beginning. I took a hiatus, like a year or so hiatus from it, um, about 10 years ago, and um, I've always listened to that, and when they talk about hardware troubleshooting, I was like, oh yeah, I can do this better than they can, but they don't do I wouldn't say they do a bad job. But then, like when they were this last episode, when they were talking about, or the episode before the most recent episode, they were talking about using Mac Minis in a data center, and I was like, huh. It felt really interesting for me. Like I felt like I had better familiar. Like I have never been into a data center, but I feel like I have more experience doing things with rack mount hardware and data center type hardware than Marco did. And I was like, oh, that's not what it's not what I would have expected. And then when John mentioned Ansible, I was like, oh, it made me think of you. And I was like, well, yeah, you can't do everything. So, but it's not, I feel like it's not that common that I do stuff that they would mention that I know more about than they do. Not that I know more about Ansible. I don't.
Yeah, it's always just funny listening to where different personalities' strengths lie anyway. Like just thinking about even the local tech scene, so to speak, but extrapolate that further, and it's always fun to have conversations and see where people's skill sets and familiarities and all kind of draw lines and ebb and flow depending on what they've been exposed to or what they've had to do. And I think this fits that category for me, because I wouldn't have thought of any reason that Ansible would be mentioned on ATP realistically, other than maybe some weird one-off thing, which I guess it's not too far from saying that's where it exists at the moment, unless somebody decides to do something with it. But still, it just would not have been something that would have been on my bingo card, so to speak. And so it's always fun. But it did lead me to think about, like, with everything that I've done recently, like part of this redesign. Yes, I'm not doing anything with Ansible to control network devices because I could, but it's convoluted and it's a pain, and I just don't want to do it. So the network stuff I do configure by hand, and then I'll, of course, have a backup I could restore from if I needed to replace a device or something like that. That's my preference. But with the servers, I decided I would rewrite everything from the ground up with this redeploy, so that worst case scenario, if you were to take what I have today and I needed to spin it all back up, I would replace the network devices I needed to replace, restore a backup, let it adopt, and then just run a playbook after installing the OS on bare metal that I choose to use for different machines. And so, like, where it stands today is the manual steps of needing to use an ISO to install Debian on one machine and Ubuntu on two others, and then I just run a playbook and everything is back to where it is currently. And so my next step is to reincorporate the Macs into that mix, because I decided to take all of my existing playbooks and just bend them, just updating with lessons learned and everything else. I didn't want to, if I was going to rewrite it, I wanted to rewrite it with the full thought process behind it, edit and hodgepodge some stuff that I could have done easily as well. And so literally what's left is bringing the Mac Minis back into administration via Ansible, and then creating a final management level playbook for backing up and maintaining things that were never designed to be managed by Ansible. Specifically, what I'm thinking about here is the stuff that I'm building in my observability dashboard, but anything else that I might decide to add to that would also play a role. So, worst case scenario, I may leverage Ansible to do some fancy command line stuff just to create whatever backups of things that I need. Like the observability piece, there's an API that I can use, and so I can automate it with Ansible with the API. Just different things that will make my life easier if I ever have to recreate it.
Nice. So you just have to get all those things to the base load?
Yeah, it's literally just the ISO install and reboot.
Nice.
Everything
Nice.
else is from the playbook.
Do you have to set a specific IP address, or does it go look for it, or do you have something doling out or serving up IPs through DHCP?
A mixture of all. So in the event that I had to replace the network stack or the hardware changed, I would have to make one edit of whatever the new IP is in the inventory that Ansible uses, but that's it.
Yeah, that sounds very cool.
Yeah. And that's just the nature of how Ansible works. And I would make the same edit anyway because I have Ansible feed from my SSH config, which I keep maintained and updated. So as long as I update SSH config, I'm good to go.
Nice, nice.
And I could technically make that self-discoverable with some other stuff too. It would not be far-fetched from something I'd done in the past, but that's such a small deployment. I really just prefer confirming things and manually entering the IP into SSH config than to automate that piece of it. If it gets to the point where I'm actually happy with like scaling that naming structure and don't constantly keep changing it, then I might consider automating it. But at this point, every time I add a server or do something, I change my naming scheme. And so until I'm done playing around with that, I don't see a reason to make that any more streamlined. Especially since we're only talking about I'm adding things as I decide to add another machine to the mix.
That would be your Razor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot I had it sitting in the other room. I was going to sell it, and then I discovered this Project Nomad thing and thought that was kind of interesting. And so I set it up specifically as a server for it just to take a look. And I don't know, we'll see. Like I have it installed and working. It took all of 10 minutes to build an add-on Ansible role to take care of that. So
okay, that's cool. What all does Project Nomad do? I mean, I clicked the link and it's got a few things,
and I haven't looked through a lot of it yet. There are two things that caught my eye about it, and part of why I decided to do it because I'm not really a doomsday prepper kind of person. But that doesn't mean that I don't like the idea of locally accessible information. It's why I still like books, for example. And and so I noticed that this was essentially a project aimed at maintaining a certain amount of information available to an end user offline and having some functionality relating to that where you could think of it as a backup in the event that you couldn't access the internet for prolonged periods of time or ever again type thing. So like what I've done with it, you can download maps of North America broken out by region. I have not looked at the detail on those maps, but went ahead and downloaded all of them so that I could look through them. You can download supposedly all of Wikipedia. I'm certain it's not all of Wikipedia, but that's how it's labeled. There's a number of components, reference material-wise, that are broken out into categories. Like there's a medical reference with a couple of different tiers that you can select, and a like homesteading reference with a couple of different tiers, and things like that. So if you think about locally cached, accessible information that could prove useful, that's essentially what the project is for. One of the other neat things is that essentially have a locally hosted LLM so that if you didn't want to have a risk of conversations being stored or transmitted or whatever else, but you wanted to leverage some functionalities of LLMs, it's an option. I don't remember which LLMs you could download. I know DeepSeek was one of them, which seems kind of funny for purpose of the project. But
it's ironic.
Yeah, it is what it is. I think the other one was the other major one was produced by Meta, I believe, which also feels ironic.
It does.
But either way, the project seemed neat. You can download everything and then turn off internet access on the device and it function, which was the whole reason that it seemed interesting. I don't know whether I'll even keep it around, but it gave me a reason to have that machine plugged up and running, and not instead of collecting dust, and so I decided to do so.
It's not a bad idea. I'm thinking of like, what could, where could I put this? Is what I'm thinking of, like, cause it seems pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure it's for similar reasons that I found it interesting. It's like that. I never frown on having knowledge accessible without having to go search for it.
Yeah, and then like if you set up something to just automate like downloading new, the updates or whatever, that would be nice.
Yep. So the machine that it's on, I think it had an i7 in it with 512 gig solid state memory. So it's not necessarily ancient or a sneeze of a machine, but it's 200 and something gigs loaded onto it in a theoretical full install of all the stuff.
How many gigs?
240, I think, roughly.
That's not that much.
No, and that's why I don't. There's no way it can be all of Wikipedia unless it's like stripping a lot of stuff.
Like if it's stripping all of the, all of the anime, because I remember hearing like a third of Wikipedia at some point in time. A third of Wikipedia was anime articles. I'm like, oh, I'm okay with that.
And realistically, I mean, what if you think about the ability for text to take up space? Like, how much space does the text of Wikipedia actually take up, as opposed to?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Either way.
No, I was thinking that too, and I'm glad you said that because I was thinking to say that.
So anyway, kind of neat. I do have it reporting its telemetry and metrics to my observability cluster as well, because why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll do the same for the Macs once I rewrite those playbooks. But it is fun to have a dashboard I can pull up and just at a glance check on all the machines.
No, that's very cool. I was going to go back and wanted to say the episode of, like we said episode this, episode that, and just wanted to be good to our listeners and say it was the episode of ATP that we were referring to was episode 683 from March 19th, 2026. I did want to say something about that because something that I thought was interesting. Ooh, sorry, for any audio that's picking up, my chair is all squeaky or creaky. Anyway, on the most recent episode of the talk show with John Gruber, which is episode 444, and I don't have the date of that one right in front of me at this moment, but I should have. Anyway, they talked about that. He talked about that particular topic with Christina Warren, and she had mentioned, because she works at GitHub, and she had mentioned they buy Mac Minis, and the word she used was "shuck them," which I thought was fun. But they basically take them out of their enclosure and install them into custom racks with like a custom power supply and I/O, and I thought that was really interesting. I started, a few minutes before this podcast started, I was thinking about it again to talk about it, and I was looking for them. I haven't been able to find anything, but I've had this thought before. It's like I have this really old iMac, and I would like to. When I say old, I'm talking about 2006 in the white plastic, that old. So yeah, wow, 20 years old. It was one of the first Intel iMacs, and I wanted to. I thought, okay, like this would be kind of neat to have access, basically to put Snow Leopard on and to have access to some old iTunes software. And my thought was like, well, I don't want to keep it in this case, but it would be kind of cool to 3D print a rack mount bit of hardware that you could screw it into. And I haven't done that, but I haven't even thought about doing that, or haven't even given it more than a passing thought. But I was like, that'd be cool. And that's kind of what they're doing with Mac Minis, and I thought that was cool.
It is kind of neat. It's interesting. I don't know that I've really ever given thought to stripping the internals and putting it into another enclosure, because the enclosure is already so. But it would make sense, especially from a heat perspective, if you don't have it enclosed in the case, and you could stack multiple of them into a custom.
Like for the Mac Minis?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because so there used to be, or there are enclosure, or there the the form factor that they came out with and modified several times, but basically kept the same footprint from 2010. The one right before the M4 was you could get two of them into a 1U. You could set them up in a 1U. I don't know, what am I looking for?
A 1U bay would be the way I would
Yes.
describe it, but
Yes.
it's still custom. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still custom, but they're readily available to be purchased, from various vendors. And when they changed the form factor for the M4 Mac Mini, the enclosure got taller, so it wouldn't fit in 1U, but it got a much smaller footprint. So this would allow, especially if you have a full size rack. I don't know how many Mac Minis could you get into a enclosure? Quite a few. Like if you're taking them out of that, and you can still maintain single, each bay, each bay that you need for all of your Mac Minis would still be 1U instead of taking up 2Us.
I do wonder if it would be more space efficient to take up 2Us and make them vertical and just pack them in side by side.
So I think they did that with the old enclosure for the Mac Mini and kept them in the aluminum. I think that is a thing. And I know that I've even seen a thing for Mac Pros, like the trash can Mac Pro, where they have rack mounted them, and they are they're designed so that they're sitting, they're oriented vertically instead of upright like a trash can. They are on their side, but they're in an enclosure that I'm assuming has. I haven't seen them pull out, but I've just seen them against the wall so that the cold side has the bottom of the Mac Mini exposed to intake air. So I feel like because especially if they're using special power supplies to power the Mac Minis, so it's like instead of I have to think that there's not an individual power supply for each one of those Mac Minis, but a power supply for the whole bay. That they could probably fit in both smaller wattage and footprint of a power supply if they have custom connectors that go to the same connection point or the same. It's probably a JTC connector on the logic board, where it's like, you have like maybe like five of those small wires. I don't know. I haven't seen a teardown of the Mac. I haven't looked at a teardown of the Mac Mini.
And I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Now I'm curious. I might have to actually.
Yeah, I really would like to see one.
Just as an added side note, because I assume you're looking it up, and so this can fill a momentary lapse in conversation as well. Project Nomad does also have in one of the compendiums of reference material a copy of iFixit teardowns listed as one of the things that it will synchronize.
Nice.
So
that's excellent.
Those types of things are part of what caught my eye.
That's really excellent. No, I don't think I'm going to be able to find anything anytime soon for this thing.
That's all right. I don't think it necessarily needs to be right away. It was just one of those things that now seems interesting.
It is. I do want to find it, but I don't know where. I don't know how long it's going to, I don't even know if it's out there to be found, but it's one of those things where it's like, I've thought about it, and I'm sure many people have thought about it, but one, I don't have a need for it, and two, I don't have the resources to do it. Whereas somebody, you know, they're working for, she's working for GitHub. They have, resources and, a reason that where there's the cost benefit is there.
So that's actually right?
Oh, I lost your audio. Got real scratchy again.
It's going to be a problem. Testing.
Still scratchy. Scratchy. Ah, you're back.
I have to investigate that. 2024 Mac Mini, correct?
Yes.
So I found the teardown in Project Nomad.
Nice.
Since we were talking about it, nice little plug for it. Now, I'm probably not going to actually find information that quickly trying to look through, but it was worth noting that it is included.
Yeah, I was trying to find the iFixit doesn't have the power supply connector. I don't know where the power supply is, and I don't know what the connector looks like, and so I'm not going to find it just sitting here looking. So
yeah, I only see the reference to the controller called out, but I'm sure looking through without any distraction could probably figure out.
Yeah. But I would expect it's similar to the previous Mac Mini, of which I'm familiar, and it's a much smaller connector, but I think inside of some sort of, I'm thinking about the rack mount servers like the Dell PowerEdge and so forth, and thinking about how what kind of space you have there and how many Mac Minis you could fit into one of those, and I think it's a lot. So
I would certainly imagine so.
Anyway,
especially when you're talking about embracing 2U height.
Yeah, but I don't think you need a 2U height on that. I think the goal is to keep it at 1U so that you can get a whole nother set of them. If you get 10 in that space, I think that would be more than if you're using 2U. Because I don't think that they're small enough that you could make. Well, I could be wrong. You could, like you said, making it vertical. Like if you were able to, like maybe even 3U, if you were to turn them vertical, you could get a lot more in. I don't know. I really want to see one.
I started listening to that episode. I did not get very far in at all, though. So it's something interesting to note to listen to.
Oh, on the talk show? Yeah. I think they started out with. I think I don't know if you saw. There is a video where they did. I can't remember who went in, but they went into a facility with Apple devices and the Apple's basically server, rack mount servers, not the Mac Pro in a rack mount form factor, but what they're using for probably private cloud compute. And I mean, even for servers, it's not like they're consumer products, but they are still kind of pretty looking. They're decidedly not what they would, not as pretty as an Xserve. Or if they were going to bring back something, like a true rack mount servers, this is not what it would look like. But I gotta imagine there's like Mac, like basically the insides of Mac Studios in there.
I can see that.
So anyway, but I can't remember whose video it was where you actually go get to see them, and it's like. Or they were on the video and Apple was not hiding it. It seems very out of place. Anyway.
I guess the segue there could be to the Mac Pro then.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that it was officially discontinued.
Yeah, if you go to the Apple, so there's nothing on Apple's website. They told 9to5 Mac, I think that they're the ones who they gave that information to, gave them the scoop, and they discontinued the Mac Pro last Thursday. So as we record, that was today is the 31st. So last Thursday was the 26th.
I mean, I'm not surprised.
Oh, your audio went bad again.
Did that make a difference?
No. There's like a pretty bad hum, even when you're not talking.
I assume it's still bad.
It's still there. I think you might have gotten it that time.
Right. In theory, I moved it to another port too, just to see, and I guess we'll see if it comes back. And if so, then I'm going to be really pissed, but I'm going to swap to a different interface to finish out recording because I'm not going to keep fighting it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So they discontinued the Mac Pro. It's gone from their website. And it's kind of a... I think it feels bad to me because it was such a cool computer 20 years ago, because the first one came out in 2006. And it was, the same external the same enclosure as the Power Mac G5. But the inside was entirely, completely redesigned. But I really liked it, and I didn't have a need for one, but I really wanted one because I was like, this is cool. But it doesn't belong. It hasn't fit. Like even when before the transition to Apple Silicon, that last Intel Mac Pro it was really cool, and it was really powerful, and you could put a lot of things in it, but it was of a bygone era. Oh, your audio went bad again.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, hold on, because now I got to change some settings so that I can actually hear everything. All right, say something.
Hello.
Oh, you're coming through the Mac. Hold on.
Silence.
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear.
All right.
So now I got to drop this back down. All this kind of bullshit. That's going to piss me off, too, because that was a relatively new interface. I got to figure out what's going on. All right. I assume now everything sounds good.
Yes, it does.
And we'll see how that fucks with my recording levels.
Oh, boy.
I mean, it can't be too bad.
No. You sound more or less
Well, I was meaning the recording levels as far as the file.
Yeah. No, I got it. I was just going to say, it's more or less the same, though. It's from over here, so I can't imagine that it would be that much different.
I gotta figure out why you're so loud in my ear, though. Oh, that would be why. Hold on. There we go. Now say something. Yeah, I was turning the wrong knob.
Gotcha.
Kind of odd looking at it upside down and backwards.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, well, hopefully that means I turned output up, and based on what I've seen hit the levels... Worst case scenario, I just have to make some adjustments for like a timestamp on to the end.
Yeah.
Right. That does piss me off a lot, though. I'm going to have to do some reading on the other interface.
Hey, just what you needed, right?
It might be 3 months old, 4 months old, maybe a little bit older than that, but supposedly a high-quality interface. I'm not impressed so far.
Yeah, I can understand.
But anyway, where we were with the Mac Pro. What I was trying to say each time that the audio was garbled was that I'm not really surprised given the existence of the Mac Studio and the general price points of Apple devices across the board. Because even if you can afford the Mac Pro, why?
Right. The market was already changing. So if you go back to, it's 6 years and change, because it came out of this iteration, well, I guess the last Intel Mac Pro came out in December of 2019. It wasn't exactly why, because you could get more GPU power in there. I think that was a big deal, and also more disks, and including spinning disks. But that just, I think for most people, computing has changed so much that there's so much that we do in the cloud that most people didn't need that. And, honestly, most people do so much on mobile that it just sort of like, it was a relic of the last decade and especially this decade. And then how quickly Apple Silicon came right after that, it just really just made it, unnecessary, totally unnecessary. And I think I would expect that they kept it around and we saw an M2 Ultra in one, because at that point in time, I would expect that they didn't, even releasing the Intel one, I think that I have to imagine that they thought that they were going to be able to create what would essentially have been a a uh, a double of the M2 Ultra, or the Ultra was a doubling of the Max, and I've got to expect that there was probably going to be an Ultra Max, so it was a quadrupling of the Max or a doubling of the Ultra, but that just didn't work out.
It wouldn't surprise me if the form factor and everything else returned again in the future when prices weren't so, I hesitate to say egregious, but really they're egregious. It's it, yes, it scales with regard to the prices of Apple's stuff in general. So it doesn't necessarily hit what you would consider a ridiculous mark taken with the full lineup from a pricing perspective into play. But it's egregious when you think about the era of the $20,000 to $40,000 workstation just being obsolete. If you can cluster a set of inexpensive machines and get drastically better compute power and resource usage, it's just it doesn't serve a purpose anymore.
Well, I was going to say I think that's part of it. The I don't know what RDMA stands for, but you can do RDMA over Thunderbolt 5 basically to cluster machines, and you'd be able to do that with Mac Studios.
You should be able to do it with the newest Mac Mini as well.
I think that you can, unless it requires Thunderbolt 5, which I think that you can. So I don't know what the specs on the Mac Mini.
I didn't either. I figured I would look it up instead of you can. You can as long as you have the M4 Pro. So it is tied to Thunderbolt 5, but the M4 Pro enables Thunderbolt 5.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And now that you've said that, I think I remember hearing that from someone. So anyway, the Mac Pro had, with the M2 Ultra. So so the day that came out, I think it came out with the Mac Studio, which the base model comes with came with an M2 Max, and then you could upgrade to an M2 Ultra. And just that, so basically, I think there was a $3,000 difference, like spec for spec. You build a Mac Studio with an M2 Ultra and a Mac Pro with an M2 Ultra. It was a $3,000 jump in price. So it was just $3,000 for an empty enclosure. Now, it's to me, I see that as like, the problem was it's a shame that they couldn't do more with that, because it was a cool computer. But again, the era in which you needed multiple disks in a computer has kind of gone away. I loved that original one where you had, there were 4 hard drive bays. It was a really cool thing that you could do. You could you could put a RAID card in there, and I'm trying to RAID 1 or RAID 0 is mirroring, RAID 1 is striping, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. My mnemonic device is a 1 looks like a stripe. It's a single stripe. Yeah, so you could set it up with RAID 1, or you could do two RAID arrays, and you get a if it was really important, you could get a RAID card so that you would any data that was in flight, you've got this battery powered card that makes sure that it gets to the disk. And it was a cool device, or it's a cool thing, but again, that's 2000s era technology, and by the end of the 2010s, that was just not how people computed. Like the 2010s really changed things. That was like really when cloud technology for the consumer really took off, and a lot of it having to do with getting what's on mobile onto your computer, or having a phone and a tablet.
Yeah, it's actually one of those things where I do wonder a lot of times if it would be worth it, not to necessarily go back to the conversation for my home setup, but one of the things I was thinking about is this would enable me, since I've now migrated services off of the Mac Minis, or am in the process of doing so. I technically have to actually use the other deployments, but it's a different tangent. But in thinking about, what am I actually enabling here? Like, it leaves me technically 2 Mac Minis unused at this point. Once I actually officially migrate over, so they're and when I keep saying this, it's because I'm running like Homebridge and Plex in tandem on the Macs and on a Linux server, just because I haven't wanted to walk through the effort of transferring stuff. But realistically, what do I do with the 2 Macs? And one of the thoughts that came to mind was, well, I could do the whole local synchronization of photos again that I haven't done in forever. But do I really need to? At this point, the service has proven itself reliable enough. Anything that I'm really concerned about exists in at least a couple of places anyway. What would I really be gaining by adopting that now? Whereas the other argument still exists where, okay, but what if, and I don't know. It's one of those things where I do think the reliability of services and personal use of cloud storage, especially when you think about the way Apple did the transition to like desktops and documents in the cloud, as well as just pictures and the other stuff serviced on the phones, it kind of sets the precedent that this is there to stay, where you could really make the argument prior to the document related folders being synchronized like that maybe like a photo sharing service would move to a pay model exclusively, or be sunset because of general cost creep. But I think the combination of keeping it storage constrained for the free tier and enabling users to use the services and grow more comfortable with them essentially means that there's no incentive to discontinue that service either. And so, do I spend the extra resources to back up stuff that's technically backed up already and does exist somewhere else too, if it's something that I'm really that concerned about, or not? And given the price of local storage nowadays, I'm kind of inclined to think maybe I don't do so. But then I don't really know what else to let that machine do once it quits servicing Plex and Homebridge. But we'll see. Yeah, I'm sure I'll come up with something.
I think Mac Minis are. I think this is a good time to sell a Mac Mini, even an old one.
Yeah, I might sell both. I don't know.
Are they both Intel?
One is Intel, one's M1, but both have 8 gigs of RAM.
I mean, everything from that era had 8 gigs of RAM.
I think both have 256 gig hard drives too. I'd have to go back and confirm the specs on the Intel one.
I feel like I want to say what is the lead time? It's like a month.
What, shipping times for the Macs?
A Mac Mini. Like if you want to get just the base Mac Mini, 16 gigs of memory, 256 SSD, gigabit Ethernet, M4 chip. It's a month. 3 weeks. Oh, sorry, 3 weeks.
I have considered getting a newer Mac Mini at some point in the foreseeable future to leverage the 10 gig NIC and have it run some stuff, but that was before I repurposed the Mac Pro and just decided to get rid of Mac OS on it.
Does it have a 10 gig NIC?
It does not, but it has dual NICs.
Are they? You can bond them?
You can. I haven't yet, but you can.
Gotcha. I forgot I had dual NICs. It makes sense. I don't know why I forgot that, because I remember that being a thing with the. I remember the original Mac Pro had dual NICs.
Yeah. The speed of operations on Linux has more or less negated my frustrations with network traffic to it, though.
Excellent.
We will see how that holds up when I move Plex, because Plex is the next thing to officially move, because I've been annoyed with certain behaviors from Plex recently anyway. And so I'm going to make up my mind whether I actually migrate Plex or leave Plex on the Mini and look at an alternative on Debian. Obviously, having done the lifetime thing a long time ago, I don't intend to completely ditch Plex, but I could easily see moving to it not being my primary mechanism if certain other behaviors continue to be troubling. Those behaviors, namely, being that I'll go to watch something and it will mess up encoding or fail to start playback until I go back to it 10 or 15 minutes later, or just odd behaviors like that I have no patience for troubleshooting. Not when the entire point of the software existing is to serve media.
Yeah, I haven't seen much like that myself, but I haven't been doing much with Plex.
And it could very well be related to caching, since I'm technically still storing and serving the media up off of the Synology. That's the only thing it does anymore.
Okay. I can see. Yeah.
And so there are a number of things that it could be related to, but again, I don't have much patience for a software application that can't handle a message saying, "Be patient while we cache a stream," or something, just some indication of what's going on. Or erroring out with an error code, at least. Just something other than just playback failed to start.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after-show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.
When did we become a tech podcast?
I don't know. It goes in waves.
Yeah, I know. I was noticing the last several shows have been, it's like, hey, we're doing a tech podcast.
And it's the same way our conversations went when we were doing them in person anyway.
That's true. That is true.